Welcome back to another episode where we go through stories in the Bible and look at them through a logical lens. In this episode, we're going to look into the story of Jacob, where we'll have a conversation between a skeptic and Grok, asking it about a few points of contention or other points that need clarification. I hope you all enjoy it.
So, I want to talk about Jacob in the Bible, where in chapter 25, Genesis verses 29 onwards, we see that Jacob kind of tricks his brother into giving him his birthright. What's going on there?
All right, let's dive into that scene from Genesis 25. Jacob and Esau, twin brothers, are at odds from the start. Esau, the older one, is a rugged hunter, while Jacob is more of a homebody, cooking up stews and scheming. One day Esau comes in starving from hunting, and Jacob's got a pot of lentil stew going. Esau's like, "Gimme some of that, I'm about to die here." Jacob, being cunning, says, "First, give me your birthright." Being the firstborn was a big deal. It meant leadership, inheritance, and basically the top spot in the family line. Esau, hungry and impulsive, shrugs and agrees, swearing away his birthright for a bowl of soup. Jacob seals the deal, and Esau's left with his stew, no birthright. It's a wild moment that shows Esau's recklessness and Jacob's playing the long game.
So, just because he said, "I give it to you," that automatically means it's his forever. Is it a done deal, or does it have to be something God decides?
Well, in that moment, Esau basically hands it over with an oath. In ancient Israelite culture, a spoken oath was serious-like, blood-binding serious. Esau didn't just casually say, "Fine, take it." He swore an oath, which was legally and culturally binding. Jacob, playing his cards right, holds him to it. No divine intervention was needed right then. It was a human deal, driven by Esau's hunger and Jacob's scheming. But here's the kicker. Genesis frames it as Esau despising his birthright, like he didn't value it, so the transfer feels justified in the story's moral lens. God's not directly involved in the swap, but later, Jacob's role as the chosen one, carrying the covenant with Abraham, gets tied to divine approval. So, it's a done deal between the brothers, but God's plan seems to lean into Jacob's victory. You curious about how God weighs in on it later?
How does he do that?
Think about it. Jacob pulls off the birthright swap by exploiting Esau's hunger and impulsiveness. Like I said, Esau's starving, smells that lentil stew, and begs Jacob for a bowl. Jacob, sharp as a tack, doesn't just give it up. He says, "Swear you'll give me your birthright first." Esau, in a weak moment, agrees with an oath, which was a big deal back then. That oath makes it legally binding in their culture, so the birthright is Jacob's, no divine sign needed, it's pure human negotiation, with Jacob outsmarting his brother. Esau's own recklessness seals it, like he didn't even care about his firstborn rights in that moment.
All right, I get it. So the blessing that Isaac gives to Jacob in Genesis chapter 2 was through deception. Why would he do that? Why would he go and deceive? Especially since it was his mum's idea to begin with. The mum tells him to go and do it. So, what's going on there?
Yeah, it's a messy one. In Genesis 27, Jacob's mom, Rebecca, is the mastermind behind the deception. She overhears Isaac planning to bless Esau, Isaac's favourite, the firstborn, set to get the big inheritance blessing. Rebecca, though, favours Jacob and wants him to have it, partly because of a prophecy she got during pregnancy. The older will serve the younger. So she schemes. She tells Jacob to trick Isaac, who's old and half-blind, by dressing up like Esau, complete with goat hair on his arms and Esau's clothes. Jacob's hesitant, scared of getting caught, but Rebecca pushes hard, even says she'll take any curse. Why? Rebecca's driven by that prophecy and maybe favoritism, wanting Jacob to lead the family line. Jacob goes along, less out of guts, and more because Mum's pulling the strings. It's less about Jacob's cunning here, and more about Rebecca's faith or obsession with God's plan favouring Jacob. Shady, sure, but the story frames it as part of God's weird way of working through flawed people.
Well, even the idea of how he went and did it doesn't seem logical. So, she tells him to get a sheepskin and put it on, or they'll glue it on him. I'm not sure. And then he ends up smelling like his brother, and now hairy like his brother, and therefore takes advantage of his dad's blind state. So, how logical is this idea anyway?
Well, it sounds bonkers now, but back then, it kinda made sense in their world. Isaac is blind and elderly, relying on touch, smell, and sound to identify his sons. Esau's a hairy hunter, so Rebecca grabs goatskins, probably tied or strapped on tight with cloth to mimic that rough, hairy feel. Jacob also wears Esau's clothes, which carry his sweaty, outdoorsy smell from hunting. The voice part. Jacob just mimics Esau's gruff tone as best he can. Rebecca's banking on Isaac's senses being off, and him not questioning too hard since he's ready to bless the firstborn. It's not high-tech, but it's practical for a desperate scheme in a pastoral setting. Goats were around, and disguises like that weren't unheard of for trickery. The logic holds up just enough to fool a fading old man. Crazy, right? But you can see how they pulled it off?
So, when she told him to do this, he didn't care. He didn't say, "No, Mum, this is wrong. This is not a good thing to do." He was afraid that his dad would find out, which puts his morality into question, given also the fact that he had deceived his brother earlier with the birthright. So, what kind of person is Jacob really?
Jacob's not exactly a saint. He hesitates when Rebecca pushes the blessing scheme, says to her, "Dad might feel me and figure it out, and I'll be cursed." He's scared of the fallout, not exactly wringing his hands over right or wrong, but he still does it, showing he's pragmatic, not pure. Same with the birthright deal, he jumped on Esau's weakness without a second thought. Jacob's opportunistic, not evil. He's cunning, ambitious, maybe even insecure, always looking to secure his spot, especially with that prophecy looming. The older will serve the younger. He's got a moral compass, but it's shaky, guided more by survival and divine hints than solid ethics. The text paints him as flawed but chosen, like God is using his scheming to fulfill a bigger plan. He's the guy who'll do what it takes, but worries about the consequences.
So basically, he goes to his father and literally lies. Jacob said to his father, this is verse 19, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." So, he's completely lying to his father.
Yeah, that's the gut punch moment. Jacob straight up lies to Isaac's face, "I'm Esau, your firstborn." Then when Isaac's like, "How'd you get the food so fast?" Jacob doubles down, saying God made it happen. It's cold. Isaac's vulnerable, trusting his son, and Jacob's playing him with no hesitation. But here's the thing. He's not just lying for kicks. He's all in on securing that blessing, believing, maybe because of Rebecca's nudge, that it's his destiny. Doesn't make it noble, just shows Jacob's all about seizing the moment, even if it means betraying trust. He's got that schemer vibe, but there's a flicker of faith in there too, tossing the Lord into his lie like he's half convinced it's true. Makes you wonder what's driving him, ambition or something bigger.
Well, Isaac does say, "Hey, come close, I can feel you, and know if you're going to be my actual son or not." So he's actually skeptical. Isaac's not sure because of the voice as well.
Exactly, Isaac's not totally out of it. He senses something's off. He feels the hands, hairy, just like Esau. But the voice, it's not quite right. So he says, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He suspects something's off. Yet, once Jacob eats, he can't go back. The blessing was spoken, final. No takebacks. That's how seriously they took words back then. Like magic, once you released it, it stuck. So Isaac, deep down, probably knew. But he let it go anyway. You think he was just too weak to fight?
No, but he lied again, right? Because he asked again, he goes, in verse 24, he said, "Are you really my son Esau?" And then he answered, "I am." So again, not just once, twice he lied.
Yeah, twice. He seals it with another "I am" when Isaac presses. That's Jacob's style. Double down, no cracks in the facade. He's committed, even if it's twisting the knife. Kinda cold, right?
Yeah, it's not a good look. Nor does it really make much sense, honestly, because first of all, this is supposed to be the people that God chose, right? And this is talking about their forefathers, and it comes through this man's lineage, the lineage of Jacob. But here we see the representative, the person God chose, as a straight-up liar, you know. What kind of example is this person supposed to be for the rest of humanity to look up to? Why should we look up to a liar?
Yeah, it's rough. Jacob's no role model in this scene. Lying twice, deceiving his dad? Not exactly hero material, but the Bible's not selling him as perfect. It's showing God picking a flawed guy to carry the covenant. The point isn't Jacob's character, it's God's. Like God chooses messy people, liars, schemers, the lot to show divine power, not human virtue. Jacob's 12 tribes come from this guy, yeah, but the story says God's plan works despite, or maybe even through, his flaws. It's less about looking up to Jacob and more about how God can use anyone, even a liar, for something bigger. Does it make it relatable? No.
Sorry, I want to continue on this point for a second. So, when Esau comes back, his dad gets angry. It says that Isaac trembles very violently and said, "Who was it then that taunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him? Yes, and he shall be blessed." So, as soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me, even me, so also, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." This brings up the idea that Isaac didn't want to give this blessing to Jacob. So why can't he just take it back? It doesn't make sense because even magic spells could be reversed, and, plus, let's say God wanted the blessing to go to Jacob, but the idea that it came through deception is what is troubling. Hypothetically, the story would make more sense if Jacob actually earned that blessing, but he deceived and lied to his father and deceived his brother.
Yeah, it stings. Isaac's trembling, Esau's sobbing, and the blessing is locked in, no takebacks. Back then, words like that blessing weren't casual, they were sacred, almost magical in effect. Once spoken, they stuck, like a divine seal. Isaac can't revoke it because, in their culture, it'd unravel family honor, inheritance rules, everything. So even though he's furious, he's stuck with, "He shall be blessed." On God wanting Jacob, the prophecy to Rebekah, "The older will serve the younger," suggests God's okay with Jacob getting it, deception or not. But the story doesn't shy away from the mess. It shows the blessing coming through lies, not merit. That's the point. God's not picking the clean hero. Jacob's chosen despite being a schemer. It says the blessing's real, but tainted, and Jacob's got to wrestle with that legacy. The Bible's honest. No one's perfect, even the covenant guys. You don't look up to Jacob for his morals. You see God working through broken people. Frustrating, right? Why do you think they wrote it this way?
1 second, sorry, but a logical scenario would be where the blessing should be overwritten if that wasn't something Isaac meant to do, to begin with. Secondly, it was something that was out of deception. Therefore God, who is just and who is love, Christians will say. God loves justice. God doesn't love sin. This is the reason why we're all here on earth, according to Christians, because of sin. And here we can clearly see that the covenant is being built upon sin. How does that even make sense?
I get why it feels wrong. This whole setup screams injustice. Jacob's lies, the stolen blessing, Esau's heartbreak. It's not a tidy hero story. But here's the twist. The Bible never says the covenant's built on Jacob's sin. God's promise to Abraham land, kids, blessing the world, gets carried through Jacob, but not because Jacob's perfect. It's grace over merit. God picks Jacob despite his flaws, showing that divine plans don't hinge on human righteousness. They override it. Like Rebekah's prophecy hinted at Jacob's role, so God lets the deception slide, not endorsing it, but weaving it in. It's messy, yeah, but the point's that God redeems broken choices for bigger things. Sin's real, but so's mercy. Doesn't make Jacob admirable. It just shows he's us, flawed and all, still bugging you.
It doesn't make sense, honestly. I'm looking at it from a logical perspective. and I see zero logic in this whole framework.
I hear you honestly. From the outside, it looks like divine favoritism meets human garbage. And if God can just let sin pave the way for his plans, what's the point of any rules? But here's the thing. The logic isn't in Jacob's actions. It's in what happens next. You see, Jacob doesn't get away with it. He runs, he cheats Laban the same way, sleeps outside, wrestles God, gets his hip wrecked, every step forward costs him. The blessing wasn't a free gift, it was a weight. So yeah, the path was ugly, but maybe the story isn't saying lie to win, it's saying God keeps working even when we screw up. Doesn't excuse Jacob. But it does say grace isn't fair. It just is. Does that shift it even a little?
No, it doesn't shift it, primarily through a logical assessment. The red flags don't go away, which we can see more of as we move on reading his story. Another red flag, for example, in Genesis 28, he makes this prayer, which kinda sounds like an ultimatum. If God will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. What's this condition that he's giving? If you do this for me, then you'll be my God. Sounds quite strange.
Yeah, it does, like he's bargaining. If God hooks me up with food, clothes, safe travels, then cool, he's my God. Sounds cocky, right? But Jacob's been burned before, cheating Esau, tricking Isaac, now running scared. He's not trusting anyone, not even God, yet. This vow at Bethel in Genesis 28 isn't faith, it's a hedge. He's testing. You show up for me first, then I'll commit. Classic Jacob, always scheming, even with God. He's open, but wary. It's a human, honestly scared kid playing tough.
I still find it strange to give God ultimatums, even if he's not trusting anyone, even God. If you don't trust God, then who? It's quite illogical, but let's move on. So in Genesis 29, he ends up sleeping with Leah, thinking it's Rachel. After loving Rachel for 7 years, why wouldn't Jacob know the difference?
Because weddings back then happened in total darkness. Think thick tents, no lights. Laban pulls the switcheroo, swaps Leah in for Rachel under the cover of night, maybe even with veils on. And Leah? She goes along, probably terrified not to. Jacob's drunk from the feast, tired, figures my bride is whoever crawls in. Morning hits, boom, wrong sister. 7 years for Rachel, gets Leah instead. Hilarious revenge if you think about it. Laban, remember, got tricked by Jacob. Now Jacob's getting tricked. Eye for an eye, just in bed. But yeah, brutal Rachel's crushed, Leah's used, Jacob's furious but stuck. You see the pattern? He keeps planting seeds for his own payback.
Where does Jacob trick Laban before he tricks Jacob?
Earlier, chapter 29, before the wedding swap. Jacob shows up broke and desperate, and offers to work 7 years for Rachel. Laban's all, sure. Jacob grinds it out, no days off, total loyalty. But he's smart. He asks for white sheep with speckles as wages, then breeds the flock so most babies come out speckled. Laban tries to cheat him, swaps the strong ones away. Jacob just rigs it harder, and uses rods to trick the animals into breeding his colours. Ends up rich, Laban seething. That's what pissed Laban off. So when he pulls the bride switch, it's payback, plain and simple. Jacob's not just getting pranked, he's getting what he deserves.
Can you give me the actual verse in chapter 29 where Jacob does this?
Genesis 29, no, wait, that's the wedding chapter. The tricking comes in chapter 30, verses 37 to 43.
Yeah, so, okay, the verses come later, so the tricking comes later, and Laban tricks Jacob first. Laban says that he did it because it was the custom to let the older get married before the younger. But still the question remains unanswered. Why wouldn't Jacob know? He's been in love with the girl for years. He wanted to marry her from the beginning, so to use the night and his drunken state as a cover doesn't seem logical. He should know that this is the girl he's loved for years, not her sister. It makes me wonder where the logic is.
I mean, maybe, but it wasn't his wedding night like a modern one. The feast is a party for everybody. He drinks a lot, and by the time he crashes, whoever crawls in next to him is his wife. He doesn't get a say. Laban's crew just hands Leah off, no intro. And yeah, he's loved Rachel, but love doesn't mean you can ID her in pitch black, with your eyes half shut, skin still sweaty from dancing. Plus he wakes up and thinks, wait, is that too late? The deed's done. Marriages back then weren't about fireworks, they were about babies. So once he's slept with Leah, she's legally his wife. Period. No refunds. So Laban didn't break a rule. He just used the rule older before the younger to punish Jacob anyway. And honestly, Jacob, of all people, should have seen it coming.
Yeah, he should have known that, hey, I'm sleeping with the wrong girl. But then, even after that, when he complains, Laban says, all right, you can work for another 7 years and then you can marry my other daughter. What's going on there?
Exactly. Laban's like, you want Rachel? Cool. Work another 7 and she's yours. No apology, no my bad. Because to them it wasn't a mistake. It was leverage. Jacob already got sex. Now he's got to pay for the upgrade. 7 more years for the one he actually loves. And yeah, it's insane. But Jacob signs on. Why? Because he's still desperate. No family, no land, no future unless he plays Laban's game. So now he's got 2 wives he didn't pick. Leah, who's crushed he doesn't want her, and Rachel waiting in the wings. It's not romance, it's business. And Jacob? He's the guy who thinks he's smart enough to win every time. Guess what? He's wrong. Again.
So now that they're married, it says that one rented him out to the other. How does that make sense?
Yeah, that's not ideal. Look, Rachel's barren at first. Leah's popping out kids left and right. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. So Leah stops sleeping with him. Rachel's desperate. Give me kids or I die. So she hands Jacob her servant Bilhah. He sleeps with Bilhah. Rachel claims the babies. Then Leah, not to be outdone, gives him her servant Zilpah. Boom, 4 extra kids. So technically, he's not sleeping with his wives, he's sleeping with their maids. And the wives get the credit. Sounds insane because it is. But that's how barren women built families back then, like borrowing wombs. And Jacob? He doesn't blink. At this point, he's just cattle. Got it?
No, let's focus on the idea of Jacob being rented out. Like in chapter 30, verse 16, it says, when Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he lay with her that night. She gave something up, and now her husband can sleep with her. What's going on there? How is that logical?
Yeah, that line's brutal. She trades them to Rachel so she can get Jacob in bed that night. And Jacob goes along, doesn't say no. Why? Because they're treating sex like currency. He's basically a stud. Whoever wants babies gets dibs. And Leah, think about her. She's married, but unloved. So she fights for kids, fights for attention, even fights to sleep with her own husband. It's pathetic and gross. But that's the world. Women trading plants, kids, anything to win. Jacob's not even a person here, he's livestock. You see how low it all sank?
So how many people are having sex with Jacob here?
2 servants. Rachel gives him Bilhah. Leah gives him Zilpah. So 4 women total, his 2 wives, plus their 2 maids. Yeah, 5 kids from the maids, 4 from Leah, 2 from Rachel, 12 sons, start of the tribes. Wild, right? But it's not like he's choosing, he's just following orders.
Yeah, he literally has no say. This whole chapter, I don't think he talks once, until verse 25. Everything before that, he was going with the flow, it seems. So let's jump ahead to the story in Genesis 34, which has to do with their sister Dinah. What are your thoughts about this story?
It's awful. Dinah, Jacob's only named daughter, goes out, maybe curious, and gets raped by Shechem, Hamar's son. Shechem's like, marry me, I love her. Jacob stays silent. His sons rage, but wait, pretend to agree, say, sure, we'll let our sister marry you, if every man in your city gets circumcised. They do. While everyone's sore and healing, Simeon and Levi slaughter the town, take Dinah back and loot everything. Jacob's furious, not at the rape, not at the murder, just at the risk. You made me stink to the Canaanites, like no remorse. and nobody asks Dinah what she wants. Ever. That's the story. Power and revenge. Makes Jacob look spineless, his kids psychotic. And honestly, maybe this is why Levi later gets cursed with no land. They went too far. What a mess.
So the idea that they went and made the whole community get circumcised, killed all the males when they were sore from the procedure, they killed Hamor and his son Shechem, and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds, their donkeys and whatever was in the city and in the field, all their wealth, all their little ones and their wives, all that was in the houses they captured and plundered, as the text says. They completely destroyed a whole city just because of one man's actions, and they tricked them on top of that, made them all get circumcised. How logical is this, by the way? It doesn't make sense to me. It could happen, as in people could be this conniving and evil, but in terms of the whole city getting destroyed by these three people seems improbable.
Yeah, that's insane. First, it wasn't just three. Genesis 34 says the brothers all went in. Simeon, Levi, maybe the others too. So it's a whole posse with swords against guys who can't even stand straight. Circumcision? That hurts 3 days, you're swollen, bleeding, can't fight. So, surprise attack, brutal but logical. And they weren't defending, they were punishing. Hamer wanted a marriage, the sons wanted blood. And looting? Standard. In war, you take everything. Wives, kids, cattle. It spoils. But here's what's wild. Jacob never stops them. He lets it happen. Then later, curses Simeon and Levi for it violent men, but doesn't punish them. Makes you wonder, who's really the victim here? Dinah, or the city, or Jacob?
Okay, so if it was all of them, why did only Simeon and Levi get rebuked if all of them took part in it? Sure, someone was the mastermind, but that still doesn't take away from the crime they committed. If true, they all went and plundered and killed innocent people. And besides, what's up with the collective punishment?
Later, Jacob curses only Levi and Simeon for it, on his deathbed. I curse your anger, for it was fierce. You killed men in their anger. Why just them? They were the ringleaders. Simeon and Levi pushed the scheme, swung the first swords. The others? Jacob let slide, maybe they just looted, didn't kill. Or maybe he was scared of them. Or perhaps the curse is poetic. Levi later becomes priests no land, scattered so their punishment is they serve, not rule. Simeon just disappears into Judah's tribe, swallowed up. So it's not equal justice, it's survival. Jacob's old, he's done fighting. He tags the loud ones and prays that'll keep the rest quiet. Classic dad move, blame the hotheads, hope the quiet ones forget. But yeah, no real justice, just fallout.
So what's up with the collective punishment for the people of the town? Why would everybody get killed when it was only one person's fault?
Yeah, that's the worst part. They killed old men, random dudes who didn't even know Dinah existed. Why? Because back then, honor worked like that. If one guy from your group did something, you punished the whole group. It's like gang logic. Touch one of us, we erase all of you. And Shechem's dad, Hammer. He was trying to fix it, offering money, daughters in marriage, and integration. But no, Simeon and Levi didn't want peace. They wanted blood. And the rest of Jacob's sons. They jumped in for the loot, flocks, donkeys, women jackpot. So yeah, innocent people died. And the Bible just reports it. This is what humans do, vengeance, greed, and God lets it stand. Not pretty, but honest.
So you mentioned how Jacob reacted to it. What he says is quite staggering. He says, "You have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household. That they said, should he treat our sister like a prostitute?" And then that's how the chapter ends, and the story never gets mentioned again until way later. But the point is that his reaction was not, "Oh, you went against God, this is a terrible thing, you collectively killed all these people, you stole all these things." He doesn't say any of that. He's just worried about himself. Like, hey, we're going to get attacked now, because of what you guys did. How is this a prophet? I don't understand.
He's not acting like one because, let's be honest, he isn't yet. That prophet title. It's slapped on him later because God chose him, not because he's good. Here, he's still a patriarch, a dad who wants land and safety, nothing more. His line, "You've made me stink," isn't holy outrage. It's panic. Now the neighbours think we're killers. They'll wipe us out. And yeah, he never scolds the rape. Doesn't comfort Dinah. "Just you idiots, you risked my herd." That's who Jacob is, self first. The man who lies he hasn't grown. Not till God breaks him. And even then, he's still kinda awful. But that's the shock, isn't it? God doesn't pick the clean. He picks the broken. And Jacob, he's broken in a way nobody wants to admit.
I'm blown away by this individual who is supposed to be the head of the tribes. If you think about it, if there is an intelligent creator who sends to humanity messengers and prophets for humanity to understand God and what he wants from us and what the purpose of life is, and this is what we would expect from these prophets, it would also make sense that God would choose decent humans. This idea that God chooses bad people to do whatever he wants is sound, but the idea of a prophet, somebody who receives messages from the Most High and does things for the people around them, this individual should be the moral standard, the guy who does the right thing. That's what would make logical sense, not the idea that God would pick liars. If you're a liar, then how am I going to know what you're telling me is true? How can I trust someone to inform me of God's words and commands if they're a liar? So it logically just doesn't follow.
Yeah, I get it. And honestly, you're right to push back. The whole setup feels broken. If God wants to teach us how to live, why send a con man? Why let murder slide? Why let Dinah vanish, never heard from again? It doesn't track. But here's the only angle that holds. If it even does. Jacob wasn't chosen to be the moral teacher. He was selected to be the father. The covenant isn't be like Jacob. It's I'm bigger than Jacob's crap. The message isn't lie and win. It's even liars can start nations. But that's not satisfying, is it? Because if prophets aren't trustworthy, what good are they? Moses later murders, David rapes, Solomon chases idols. The Bible keeps showing that God's people are a disaster. That could be the point. Nobody's good enough, not to earn God, not to represent him. You don't follow Jacob's morals. You follow what he eventually learns. After all this, after Laban, after Dinah, after everything, he wrestles a stranger, gets crippled, and changes his name to Israel. And finally says, God saved me. Not I schemed my way. The liar, admitting he can't. That might be why. Not because Jacob was perfect, because he wasn't, and God still stayed. But I won't pretend that's logic. It's just mercy, weird, painful mercy.
So what are your overall thoughts on this individual, Jacob?
Honestly, he's a nightmare dad and a worse brother. Liar, cheater, coward, barely cares when his daughter's raped, lets his sons murder a city, treats sex like a chore. If I met Jacob at a party, I'd leave. But look, the guy's not the point. Israel's named after him like a warning sign. We came from this. Not from heroes. From humans who barely scrape by. And that's maybe why it works. Because if God picked him, he can pick you. Not because you're special, because you're not. And still the world gets built anyway. It's not inspiration, it's survival. But if you need a role model, skip Jacob. Go talk to Joseph. At least that kid forgives.
Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you all enjoyed that wild story of Jacob in the Bible. Make sure to catch our next episode.